Hey y'all, thanks for stopping by. So, just over a week ago, on the 2nd of September 2025, the United States military, specifically the Navy, conducted an operation in the southern Caribbean on a boat from Venezuela. This airstrike was performed on an alleged narco-terrorist vessel. The official statement from Donald Trump is that 11 narco-terrorist gang members were killed in this strike. He claims these are all operatives from a drug cartel. These people were smuggling drugs into the United States. And this has been a big fight for Donald Trump. You know, the war on drugs wasn't enough. He wanted to bring it back for round two. It's always been this talk about fentanyl coming into the country, whether it's coming from Mexico or whether it's coming from China, or I guess now it's going to be coming from Canada, maybe Venezuela. Whoever Donald Trump doesn't like is where the fentanyl's flowing in from. You know, you designate some people as a narco-terrorist, and suddenly it's okay to kill people on international waters now. After all, this is all for national security and keeping America healthy. That's the most important part. We got to stop these drug offenders from poisoning our country and giving our fellow countrymen these dangerous substances that make them addicted, make them lose themselves. That's what the big important part of this all is, right? We got to stop drug smuggling and drug trafficking. A noble goal, to say the least. I do understand wanting to stop people from abusing these substances. It would seem our own Vice President, J.D. Vance, has some very strong opinions about this as well. In the wake of all the news about this, J.D. Vance tweeted that killing cartel members who poison our fellow citizens is the highest and best use of our military. A supporter of his decided to quote tweet and add some additional context here, saying it would be wise for those criticizing J.D. Vance to recall that his mother was a drug addict who nearly died multiple times right in front of him. This issue is extremely personal to him, and he cannot be expected to have any sympathy with cartels. And that's why J.D. Vance is so passionate about this. That's why he's telling people who rightfully point out that killing people without due process on international waters is considered a war crime by many people, that he doesn't give a shit what you call it. If you didn't know, but of course how could you, he brings it up all the time, J.D. Vance was raised in Appalachia. One of his first claims to fame was his book Hillbilly Elegy, talking about his life and times and what he grew up experiencing. And one of these stories, which I'm sure you may be familiar with, is about his mother. To support her addiction and lead a more comfortable life, she was not only stealing the drugs from the hospital she worked at as a nurse, but she was selling them to people in her community. Then I hear this and I just think about, this is someone who's smuggling drugs from a secure location out into the streets, pumping our citizens with these illicit substances, aiding their abuses, and potentially leading them down a path to their eventual overdose and death. My question is, do we airstrike her? Is that acceptable to do because this is someone who is poisoning American citizens? What about the Sackler family, the owners of Purdue Pharma? And sure, recently their payout that they have to do for their part of the opioid crisis went up from $6 billion to $7 billion. But their overall net worth is so much more than that. And it's a substantial amount of money for a normal person. Sure, $7 billion is nothing to sneeze at, but shouldn't we just missile strike them? After all, they are poisoning American citizens. J.D. Vance can certainly attest to that. He wrote a whole book about it. But for whatever reason, we're not allowed to missile strike these people. An alleged narco-terrorist boat off the coast of the Caribbean in international waters in a place we don't own, that's okay. Probably the least surprising thing about all of this, of course, is J.D. Vance's flippant nature on what a war crime is. It was about 2 years back, he had some really strong words about the Iraq War, talking about the costs and how it turned into a satellite of Iran. It was an unforced disaster that he prayed we learned the consequences for. He goes on to talk about how he felt guilty about his involvement in it as a child, which, small aside, I'm going to lose some lefties on this one, but I have a lot of sympathy for the poorer people who got used by the government, where the livelihoods and businesses in their town were driven out by, frankly, the systems of capital. And your only options left are, frankly, to die doing crime, stealing, selling drugs, whatever it is that you're going to do to make some extra money, or doing war crimes or crimes against humanity, signing up for the military or the police force so you can beat and kill people for a paycheck. You can see J.D. Vance and his mother took different paths on that one. Now, back to J.D. Vance's tweets. He then goes on to say that this anti-war approach is the reason he changed his mind on Donald Trump, because the people who hated Donald Trump were the most wrong about their foreign policy when J.D. Vance was in the military. He says that our foreign policy is held hostage by men desperate to avoid looking in the mirror that they will support the next war and the next war until their country is hollowed out. Surely you can see how crazy it is that the guy who is upset about his part in the war on terror is now cheering on the war on narco-terror. He ended this little tiff by saying that he hopes we do better in the future, and that he knows we won't until the people who let us into Iraq are scorned and ignored across the spectrum. So many of these Republicans, whether they're officials or just the talking heads you see online, have completely flip-flopped their positions over the past 2 years. And it's crazy because we all have record of this. But it's just really disheartening because when you show this stuff to their supporters, to show the clear hypocrisies in the stuff they're saying, it just doesn't matter. So many of these doofuses are cheering this on just because JD Vance said shit in reply to a Krasenstein brother. The same dude who gets upset about suit decorum and not saying thank you for the things that you've been given. Well, decorum's out the door when it comes to international law, war crimes, or just not acting like a loser online. But really, if there's anything to take from this, it's just that due process is important. Making sure that people are actually guilty of the crimes that we're sentencing them of before we kill them is important. And maintaining a level-headed viewing of the law is also important. Just labeling someone a narco-terrorist or saying that was a narco-terrorist vessel as your just cause for killing someone on international waters, I don't think that's good enough. And if you do, well, I just hope that no one you know or love is labeled as a terrorist while they're driving across a border so they don't end up drone striked by our military. But after all, they were labeled a terrorist, so I guess it's okay, right? We don't need to verify what was in the vessel. We don't need to verify who was on the boat. They were terrorists. The government said so, so it has to be true. It would be nice if our government officials actually believed in an even-handed dealing of the law. And who knows, maybe JD Vance will change his mind. And I guess until we see him dig up his mom and tie her to a missile to shoot at the next narco-terrorist boat, y'all try to have a good day.